Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the CXO Show. My name is Swapnil Kamath. I'm the CEO of Upgrad for Business. I'm very happy for multiple reasons. One of the reasons why I'm happy is right before we started recording, Amit and myself, although we're meeting for the first time, we already hit it off quite well in the first 2 minutes of this conversation. So I'm looking forward to it. Second reason is there's a look at me in red. There's a Christmas party in office, so I'm dressed for the role. And the last point is I'm taking 4 5 days of leave in the last week of the year. So multiple things are making me very very happy today. And as all of y'all know, whoever's been watching this show, that the favorite time of my week is the time when I get to converse and interact with accomplished professionals on the CXO show. At the risk of sounding and repeating myself, the CXO Show is a show that features some of India's most successful professionals because we want to create a platform for these extremely successful professionals to share their point of view, because we believe that there are lots of different platforms that feature a bunch of businessmen, bureaucrats, entrepreneurs, philosophers, sports people, musicians. I could go on and on. Nobody's featuring the people that actually run the Indian economy and are making it one of the world's largest economies. So we're trying to create that through the CXO show. And today I have one such successful professional who doesn't think he's successful, as he discussed with me earlier, but he's just being humble. But today I have Amit Arora with me. Amit, how are you doing?
I'm fine, Swapnil, and I must say you're quite a pro. It's like talking to a professional host as such. So.
Thank you very much. I think I'll share why that happens. I have a little bit of experience in doing this through my life, but anyway, I'm happy to be here, Amit, with you, and I'm excited about our conversation. Before typically I get started, I do a quick reading of an introduction of my guest, and I'm going to do the same for you.
Sure.
This introduction, of course, has been put together by Maheen, who puts this entire show together. Today, we have Amit Arora, the Chief Human Resource Officer at VST Industries. With over 18 years of experience in human resources in the consumer goods industry, Amit has dwelled in talent management, HR consulting, employee relations, personnel management, and employee engagement. Amit has a master's in human resource management and has held pivotal roles in eminent organizations such as GE Oil and Gas, Philips, GSK, and Hindustan Lever. His strengths lie in expertly navigating employee relations, seamlessly executing strategic vision, and collaborating with stakeholders to co create pragmatic solutions. His journey so far reflects his commitment to excellence. Amit's colleagues attest to his professionalism, deep understanding of the industrial relations, and a sharp foresight in collective bargaining processes, a rare find in today's dynamic landscape. Amit's result orientation, achievement driven approach, coupled with his ability to align teams to business goals, reflects a passionate and knowledgeable leader in the realm of human resources. Amit, thank you very much for being a guest on this show. And I'm extremely excited about talking to you.
So thank you, Swapnil. I think there was some technical glitch in between, so I missed most of my introduction, but I'm sure it would be a generous one because you're still talking when I reconnected. So
Yes. I hope you got that right. I never like, the all my guests really like the introduction we do for them. So
yeah,
I'm feeling so bad that you're going to get to hear it once we put the episode online. So
yes,
I'm sure you're
absolutely.
going to you're going to get to hear it then. But anyway, Amit, just like I do with all my guests, I want you to quickly run us through, in a very short and succinct way, your journey from possibly your last formal education to finding yourself in this position as human resource head at VST Industries. So if you could do that, that
Yeah,
would set the
sure.
tone for this conversation.
We'll do. So thank you, Swapnil. Uh, if I have to look back, from where it all started, I basically am a double postgraduate. I first did my master's in computer science,
Mm,
and then I, found that this is something which I would not want to do throughout my life, sitting on a
mm,
computer. Though I did like, with all due respect to all the software professionals out there.
mm.
And then I thought, that I have to do something which has more to do with people, and that's how I ended up in HR.
Wow.
Uh, from why IT and HR? Of course, IT or computer science, was something which was entrusted upon me by parents, elders, as happens in typical middle class family. Used to
Yeah.
happen. I'm not sure what is the case now because
Yeah.
my children are quite clear in terms of what they want to do in life.
Mm.
So that was a field chosen by my parents, of course, with best of intention in mind. And then after going through that, I realized this, as I said, that's something I don't want to do. And then exploring, uh, various options at that point in time, thought this would be the best thing for me going forward. And 18 years down the line, few multinational companies, various roles, some passionate colleagues, excellent bosses and mentors, brilliant team members, and we are here talking to
Yeah.
you about the
Very, very,
journey.
very, very nice. Very nice. I think it's so interesting. And it's literally every episode that I've been saying this with Amit. It's not even funny. I'm learning so much. You won't imagine, Amit, the amount of HR heads that I've interviewed, right, in the
Hmm.
recent past that come from some kind of an engineering or computer science background. It's not even
Yeah.
funny, right? And in your case, of course, you realize very early on, right? So you did probably a double master's very, very early on. But for a lot of
Yes.
HR heads, they were in their conventional business roles and then they decided to move into to HR. But I think all of them spoke about the advantage of two things, right? I think one advantage that they spoke about is the combination of probably having some kind of an engineering background plus HR. And other folks spoke about the importance of being in the real business world, which could be doing a sales job or doing a coding job or doing a project management job, so on and so forth, spending some time there and then coming into HR and how that really opened their minds to the practicalities of what happens on the ground. So I wonder whether you have any comments on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they are spot on. If I look at my own example, how my so one of the things that you get to become a little stronger. Of course, I was a little strong inherently from childhood was logical reasoning, for example.
Mm,
And one of the things that you go through after you write codes, you write programs, work with various languages, do a lot of projects.
mm,
Uh, it makes you one, it makes your kind of mind structured and in a way, and consciously or subconsciously you bring that learning in when you interact with in your role in HR. Now if you
mm,
see, HR is not mathematics, not engineering. It's
mm,
not 2 plus 2 is 4. It's very
mm.
different.
Yeah,
Each set is unique, each situation is unique, but that basis that you have had, of course, helps you
yeah,
in your to succeed in your profession. And
yeah.
from a business point of view, so my initial starting of my career, one of the things, in fact, even before the start of my career, when I was doing my vocational training or the summer training or the internship, as they say, uh, one of the HR heads with whom I was working on, in a very crude language, is showed that any function, be it HR, finance, or any, you should know धंधा कैसे होता है, पैसा कैसे बनता है. So, you
Mm.
should understand the nuances of business in
Yeah,
your own way. You may not
yeah,
be an expert in every area, but you
yeah,
should know the fundamentals of how a business is run,
yeah,
irrespective of the function you are in. And
yeah.
if you are there, then your mind will automatically, force you to work in that direction and come up with ideas and initiatives that will actually help business.
Yeah,
And over a period of time, build your credibility as a solid professional,
yeah, yeah.
irrespective of the field. That's
I
what.
couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, I think it's. I don't know whether there's any other forum online that is interviewed by now. I'm sure there are, but I haven't come across many. But that have interviewed so many HR heads now in India in an Indian context. And Amit, exactly like you are saying, I think every HR head worth its salt has reiterated, repeated, and really insisted that any young HR professional, coming up the ranks, please ensure that you be as close to business as possible, understand how business works and functions, understand what those real challenges are of business, and that will make you a great HR professional, right? Amit, I was on again doing this interview with another one of somebody from your fraternity, and they said that एक बार वो sales वाले के साथ जाके तो देखो धूप में, right? Just go spend
Right.
one day with that sales guy, yeah, because in a lot of companies, their sales teams often are probably 60-70% of the workforce, right, in some way.
Absolutely.
They were like, "एक बार जाके तो देखो, you'll have a point of view on what happens."
Absolutely, there is nothing, no experience like having the to experience such a thing on the job. And when you work with them, when you shadow them, you get to know them from a different perspective. In terms of what are they trying to do. They are also, end of the day, all of us are trying to achieve the one objective, which is to make our company grow, increase
Mm.
top line, increase bottom line, and all
Mm.
of us are contributing our bits and pieces in a way.
Yeah.
Now, as a job, as your job in HR, you are not doing your job if you are not making his or her job easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can you do help the person make his or her job easier or
Yeah.
better? How
Yeah.
can the person be a better version of himself or herself?
Yeah.
That is where what is the crux of HR, and
Yeah.
you can call it any fancy names. A lot of people, there are a lot of consultants who come up with a lot of fancy things.
Yeah.
But as long as you have these fundamentals clear in your mind, a lot of things will fall in place for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's very interesting. The other point, and again, I want your comment on that, especially given your computer science background and what you mentioned, is I think probably 20 years back, the way HR was looked at and today the way HR is looked at is very, very, very different, right? At 20 years back, possibly the HR had to fight for a spot on the big table, right? In some way, today, whether HR wants it or not, they're pulled onto the CEO's
On that
table or
table, yeah.
the big table, right? So HR has changed over these 15, 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It has, gone through its evolution. In fact, when we joined, I started working in HR. This was the conversation then. This is the conversation now. Of
Mm,
course, the context and tonality has changed, as you said. Like now it is a pull more than the push.
mm,
Which was the case earlier.
mm,
And it is because that, in my opinion, that the world is changing, and every company that has they have easy access to capital, they have easy
mm,
access to technology, they have easy access to the market. The
mm.
only differentiating factor is the people that they are
Yeah,
there, and
yeah,
who better to uh, uh, contribute in the areas than
yeah,
HR. I think this is the best time to be in this field.
yeah,
And of course, it's going to be this way for the considerable future. And
yeah,
if only that pandemic has actually, further enhanced this belief and
yeah,
further enhanced this thought rather.
yeah.
Definitely.
I couldn't agree more. A discussion that I was having, I was just telling somebody that as a country is growing at 6 to 8% or in that realm, right? So which is a fast growing economy. Naturally, people have more options and have more choices, right? And that's why I guess the war of talent in a way accelerates to a large extent, right? I think the other dichotomy when it comes to where we are right now, and that's why we as Upgrad are so proud about the work that we do, is while the economy is growing at a certain pace, people's skills are not keeping pace with the pace of the economy in some
Right,
way, right? And
right.
therefore the select few people that really upskill themselves in a lot of way have a bulk of opportunities, which makes the war for those people even more intense on one side, and the need to upskill people on the other. And that's why HR's function has become so critical, because you need to get people, you need to retain people, you need to skill people. It's a very, very, very tricky role
Yeah,
when a country is growing at 6 to 8% and there are lots of options for people.
yeah, precisely. And in fact, we are one of the most populous countries in the world. So, but look at the percentage of workforce that is there in the formal sector, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and to your point, of those workforce that is there in the formal sector, whether they have kept pace with the skills, whether
yeah,
they have upgraded themselves, whether they have the skills they are required today, maybe required in future,
yeah,
whether they're adaptive to change. All
yeah,
those things matter. And
yeah,
this kind of breed is very rare,
yeah,
and that's why the war for talent, because there's a
yeah,
question of demand and supply end of the
yeah,
day, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's how it is.
yeah,
It has always
absolutely.
been
And
like this.
correct. And I guess that's why the HR head's role and the HR function has become super critical, yeah, in the mix. And I'm glad that has happened, right?
Yeah,
I also think that the HR team gaining more prominence within organizations also leads to an organization becoming a lot more humane, right?
Absolutely.
Because of that. So it becoming prominent is a win-win situation for the company, for the country at large, and also the people working in that particular organization, right? So
Yeah.
HR becoming strong is a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, the pandemic has actually made it even stronger. Earlier issues like mental health and well-being, resilience, these
Yeah.
were, I mean, I'm not saying that all, but largely these organizations, there were some, good, very good organizations with very good practices were following it in the letter and spirit. But for majority of the organization, it was just a fad or just a fancy thing to have.
Mm.
But pandemic has absolutely changed everything. The focus on the well-being, focus on the mental health and resilience of employees, because that's what keeps you going as a company when you face a disruption of that nature.
Mm.
And organizations that are more proactive towards that, more adapt towards these things, would eventually have an edge over the others, is what I
Yeah,
feel.
yeah, absolutely. This is a good segue for this question, right? So,
Mm.
Amit, what are the big HR trends that you have seen over the last 3 to 5 years? Or another way of thinking of it could be also pre and post COVID, right?
Mm.
What are the top three trends that you've seen in HR?
Yeah,
Or changes, right? What are the big changes that come to your mind? That's what I mean by trends.
of course, pre and post COVID, one thing is very obvious is the hybrid way of working, or
Mm.
the crash course that all of us got in, the online world,
Mm.
where the remote working, or remote teams were largely a domain of IT companies, more to say.
Mm.
But the pandemic actually, made it force everyone to work
Yeah,
in a hybrid model.
yeah.
And the other impact that I see, or the trend is, see that the changing employment models.
Mm.
There are employees who are no longer, I mean, who are still interested to look at all various alternatives, or like a part time, or
Mm.
something which the IT companies fondly call as moonlighting.
Mm.
Uh, Not necessarily a bad thing in my own personal opinion,
Yeah,
of course, with my humble knowledge of the IT
yeah,
industry.
yeah.
But I think that is something which is going to change the nature of the workforce, the profile of the workforce. What I feel, going, few years down the line, will be totally different.
Mm.
There is no the security sort of sense of self-assured security of a permanent job, or
Mm.
a full-time role is
Mm.
going to change, in what I feel, in
Mm.
future. And we would have more plug and play models coming
Mm.
in, where employees, or would be possibly handling 2 or 3 assignments at a time, and
Mm.
you would do their more project based approaches, and go ahead, and there will be a core set of group which would be more permanent in
Got
nature.
it.
That's
Yeah.
what I feel.
Very interesting. So
Yeah,
one, of course, is hybrid ways of working is one big trend that you've seen that becoming
yeah,
more mainstay. And the other one, like you said, the very nature of how people work. You see the
yeah.
future being a core set of full-time employees, and then a bunch of people that are a term which exists for them are more or less on contract or project basis, right? So they're
Contract,
not.
or
Yeah.
what you say, the interim. This is the new thing. It was even at the CXO level, people are talking about interim assignments today. I mean, which was
Correct.
unheard of probably a couple of years ago. At least in
Correct.
India, of course, it's a
Correct.
global thing. But in India, you have never heard a CXO coming on an interim assignment, right?
Correct.
So, but the people are talking about it.
Yeah.
People are actually experimenting,
Got
and
it.
this is a thing I think which is going to continue. Uh, from a demographic trend, also right now we have all the demographics in our favor. But as we age over the next decade or so, I think
Mm.
these are the models that will automatically be we need to be looked at
Yeah.
for us, because uh, lot of people would be at that stage in this time where they would have the set of experience, but they would have also enough money at their disposal to do something on their own, do
Mm.
something, and not necessarily be very inclined for a full-time job as such.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think these developments are pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, and I'm
Because
talking only from an organized sector economy point of view. Of course, I know
yeah,
largely we are still an agricultural economy, and
yeah,
there are a lot of
yeah,
people still in India who stay below poverty line. But this,
yeah.
what I'm talking from a formal, set of workforce that we have in an organized sector.
Got it. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. One of from what I understand, I'm no economist, but from what I read and understand, one of our biggest problems for us to grow even probably faster than we are as an economy is the inclusion of the women in the workforce, right? We are, from what I understand, countries like Bangladesh are much
Mm,
higher than us on that particular parameter, and we lie very, very low on inclusion of women in the workplace, right? And a lot of these models could possibly, right,
help.
work for new mothers or primary caregivers in their house in some way, right? Whether it's the adults, senior citizens, or children. And I think women often find themselves stuck at home with newly born babies, and this hybrid way of working could help them a lot. And this way of possibly not having a full-time job but working on different projects as a freelancer and stuff like that, that will engage women a lot more, right? So just an example that came to mind, and I don't want to get into the business model, and which is White Hat Junior,
Mm,
right? One of the things that they did very well was most, if not all, their teachers at some point of time were women, and a
mm,
lot of these were women from engineering backgrounds, right? That could not unfortunately work full time for sometimes just personal choice that they had made,
yeah,
but they could
yeah,
find themselves productively engaged, making money online,
yes,
right, and not doing
yeah.
a full-time job, and often teaching students not just in India but across the world,
Mm.
right? And I think that is happening in various different domains as well, right? Even K-12 education, you have so many people now working in hybrid roles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, the hybrid thing does provide flexibility, but
Yeah,
also the larger point, Swapnil, in what I
yeah,
feel is, organization end of the day is a reflection of society, right?
yeah,
And whatever is happening in our society,
yeah,
organization is a, small reflection of that in its own
mm,
micro universe or ecosystem, if I may put it that way.
yeah,
Look at how much time we took to just pass the women's reservation bill in Parliament.
mm-hmm.
Thankfully, it is passed now.
Mm,
So over a period of time, I see more, women leaders now. It is by statute mandated to have 33% women in parliament.
mm,
So similarly, in workforce also, I'm not saying for pushing for
yeah,
a fixed reservation per se. It's a
yeah,
very sensitive topic in our country anyway.
yeah,
No, but yeah, you will see a lot of things with models with enable which things which will be serve as enablers for them.
yeah,
Which will be a win-win situation for the company as well as for the women
society,
employees
yeah,
who, like you rightly said, be it personal choice, be it circumstances, could
yeah,
not have taken a full-time role with the company
yeah.
because of various reasons.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. So,
Mm.
Amit, what keeps an HR head in 2023 up at night? Or what are giving you all the sweats in some way?
So honestly, last year, if you would ask me, of course, the attrition was a big thing. The
Yeah.
world experienced the great resignation.
Mm,
In my own opinion, in India, we didn't see great resignation, but we did see great attrition in
mm,
2022.
mm,
That appears to have slowed down in 2023.
mm.
Uh, that said, the constant thing that would keep me awake would my employees be ready for any future disruption that is happening? For example,
Mm,
if I talk about generative AI or Gen
mm,
AI, as it's
mm,
called,
mm.
this is something which I feel would be a big disruptor, as big as when the internet came for the first time,
Yeah,
or the smartphones revolution that came for the digital journey that we have had as a
yeah,
country.
yeah.
I think Gen AI, though it's in nascent stages, in future has the same potential of being such a
Mm,
disruptor. Now,
mm,
in that kind of world, would my employees be capable enough to fit the job requirements of the
yeah,
future? So I
yeah.
think that is something which keeps me, which is a question which I constantly grapple with, and
Mm,
what is it that I can do to equip with them
mm,
and be make them ready for future. So that is one big question if you ask me in
mm.
2023. That's
Got it.
bothering me. And of
Got
course,
it.
if last few months I just pray that the COVID spread that we see doesn't be be as bad as
Yeah,
we've seen in 2021.
yeah, absolutely. I just think that, especially during COVID, HR divisions within companies had such a massive role to play,
Yeah.
and when we think about, when we were just talking about the seat on the CEOs or the board's table in some way, COVID, I think they realized just the importance of HR to the entire scheme of things, of really
Yeah.
keeping an organization together and being sometimes the binding force of an organization. And that's what I think the HR teams did so well. Tell me, tell me a little more about the Great Resignation, right?
Yeah.
Because why do you think, was there a spurt of resignations or attrition? Then why do you think it's gone down? I can't
Uh,
quite seem to
See,
settle that argument in my
yeah,
head.
I don't have a solid answer to that question, to be very honest.
Yeah.
But what see and feel and read from various articles is that it was a knee-jerk reaction to the 2 years of hard COVID pandemic that we faced,
Mm.
right? And a lot of people, I didn't at that point in time reset their priorities, because if you just take the pandemic and look at the years just pre-pandemic,
Mm.
2019, 18,
Mm.
India, as you said, has been a growth trajectory, has been a
Mm.
growth story, and there was a high sense of competitiveness that was there in the
Mm.
organizations, right? There was
Mm.
always one out trying to outdo to each other. Of course, that had its toll on employees, and that's what I said. Earlier, this well-being and resilience and everything, that was just a thing which was talked about. Small group of people working in an organization, which I think really came to fore
Mm.
with this 2 years of pandemic that we have had,
Mm. Mm.
and it resulted in a lot of people reevaluating themselves,
Mm.
and most of it was in a knee-jerk reaction.
Mm.
That's what I feel. People
Mm.
trying to, for some of them, it was, I think, a life-changing moment, deciding to move on with life, move on, focus on things that matter to them. But
Mm.
as time has passed and as we have stabilized, I think the sense of reality has hit that again.
Mm.
And
Mm.
now, it is something, because you do need to make a living, right? To
Mhm.
to survive and
Yeah.
to pay your bills, right? So
Yeah.
that's where I think it is coming back to. So it's like a yo-yo effect. It's gone in one direction, it's coming back to
Got it. I
the
think that's
other
a
way.
fair assessment. That's a fair assessment, and given the inflation that we've seen in India and all over the world, I'm sure somebody has to pay the bills at the end, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
There's
I also
nothing
find,
called free lunch.
yeah, nothing called free lunches. Um, yeah, I also think that it took some time for people to get out of broadly what I call the work from home,
Hmm.
total work from home, right? Of
Yeah.
course, we
Yeah.
discussed that it has certain advantages. All those things are there, and there are merits to both work to office, work from home, depending on the kind of company, kind of department, kind of work, so on and so forth, right? So I think that argument is more or less settled, that there's merit in both, and
Yes.
the world in some way is going to be hybrid more and
Yeah.
more. Slight, some industries, companies tilting more towards work from office, some tilting towards slightly more work from home. However, if you remember, during COVID, there was a huge debate saying that there is this central London office building is going to be a ghost town, nobody's going to go to offices again. I
Yeah.
think people are back to offices, right? In
Absolutely.
most companies,
Absolutely.
and everywhere that I know people, some of them have done it, ripped the bandage off immediately and said, guys, back to work. Some people are doing it a little more slowly, but almost every organization is saying, hey, you have to come 4 days a week, right, or 3 days a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
have to come
absolutely.
unless your role specifically is okay with you being hybrid,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So two things, Swapnil. One is
Yeah.
that, we have had in human history a lot of technological revolutions, right?
Yeah.
One thing that has remained constant, that none of that has ever been able to replace the human. And in my
Mm.
opinion, none of them will replace. Though we
Yeah.
are talking
Yeah.
about AI right now, there will
Yeah.
always be human beings that would be required, as there will always be need for human interface and human
Mm.
interaction.
Mm.
That said, it's a very peculiar thing. Like, when we earlier, when pre-pandemic, we were talking about, certain sectoral, like in an IT industry, which are, pioneers in this work from home. And now we
Mm.
see a lot of articles mandating people to come back to,
Mm.
office, a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Indian IT companies mandating
Yeah. Yeah.
people to come back to office. So
Yeah.
that's why I said it's something that is going to be there. And in
Yeah.
fact, one of my colleagues, when I was going through this pandemic experience in my previous organization, one of my HR peers, he was so frustrated with work from home, and in one of the calls said
Mm.
that I am done for work from home for my life. I am never working
Mm.
for home from home
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, correct. And I also think, like with all things, a lot depends on the person as well,
Yes,
right? So
yes,
I think a lot depends on the person. I think certain people I assume would be much more productive in an office environment, because that physical change which is there of location really helps people mentally gear up towards doing work. A lot of peer pressure, right? When you're sitting next to your colleague, you can't do that much time pass as you could probably do when there's no peer pressure, right? There's also a lot of learning that happens, in organizations when you're right there huddled up in a room. There's a lot more social contact that happens as well, which is fun, right? And human
Absolutely.
beings,
And you
yeah,
are together, you share food,
yeah,
you go on, you take coffee breaks together. So these
yeah,
are things, which an online universe will never be able to recreate, right? And
yeah,
as helpful as it may be, and as
yeah,
modern as it may be, as I said earlier, the need for
yeah,
human interface and human
yeah,
interaction will never go away.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's something which you cannot be replicated ever by this hybrid or an online thing.
yeah,
And the best way, it will differ from company to company, individual to individual. But the best way I think is going to be hybrid, and for each companies and select sect
yeah,
of their employees to figure out what works for them.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
just do
absolutely,
because some XYZ companies are doing it as a best practice, but
yeah,
what works for you, so that's
correct.
more important,
Yeah,
rather than.
100%, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. My experience personally, directly working with people, is there are literally a select few roles that can be done totally work from home. I mean,
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
remotely. For the bulk of other roles, we need people full time in office or some version of hybrid, which is at least 2 3 days in office and the other two. And the people for which that hybrid works, in my opinion, is people that stay really far away from office,
yeah,
right, and
absolutely.
put
So,
in very very long hours. And then what happens is they get so exhausted in that travel
commute,
itself,
yeah,
and they're also putting in long hours. So then sometimes you'll just lose a resource because of that. And in those cases, it just makes sense for it to be a hybrid, right? Few days in office, few days at home, and that works well, right? In a way
yeah,
with people. But in my experience of directly leading and working with people, I've seen that work from office works a lot better, right?
yeah.
And for most roles, right? But like you said, I think the argument is around saying, you know, what type of a company, what kind of a sector, what kind of a department, what kind of a person, what kind of goals. You need to study all these things before deciding,
And what
right?
is the choice of the individual make? So, I have my cousin who has been working for last 7 8 years
Yeah,
from home.
yeah, yeah,
So she is very. In fact, I was talking
yeah,
to her during
yeah,
COVID that you are already a pro in what we are learning.
mm,
She have always been
yeah,
managed.
yeah,
But then also when you talk to her, she gets, she told me that it's not always that case. You get overlooked
yeah,
for certain
yeah,
high stakes projects. You get
yeah,
overlooked for promotions. Now she
yeah,
was talking the flip side of,
yeah,
continuously working from home for last year. But that's a
yeah,
choice she had made because
yeah,
her husband works in an area in a place where the company doesn't have its office.
yeah,
But the
yeah,
office gives her a flexibility. They don't want to lose her
yeah,
to, operate
yeah,
remotely.
yeah,
Like I
yeah.
said, it's a combination of a lot of things. Yeah.
Yes, 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 definitely, definitely. I think, as with all things in life, everything has a pro and a con,
Yeah,
right? Everything has a positive and a negative, and I think each and every person needs to see what's net positive in or net negative, and
correct.
and both companies and people need to make their choices accordingly, right? I want to talk to you, given especially your computer science background, a little about AI, right? How much of an impact do you think it's really going to have, and at what point do you think that impact will really be seen? Is it a 3 year thing? Is it a lot sooner? Is it a lot later? And it's a tough question because I know nobody really knows the answer. But if you'd want to play astrologer for a while.
It's the most
Yeah.
difficult job and, most easiest job in the same way, because nobody's going to hold me accountable for what I say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
yes, I think, this is, as I said in earlier during our discussion, that
yeah,
in my opinion, this is going to be a very big disruptor.
yeah,
And I go back to, when the smartphone or the touchscreen phones started coming, everybody,
yeah,
the leader in the market was a different company at that point in time.
yeah, yeah,
Nokia was the market leader.
yeah,
They didn't transition to this thinking that this will never work, and see
yeah,
where we are today now. And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
so I think similar to this is AI, not exactly, but it's a it's a thing which I have heard, new concept, new branches coming up as prompt engineering.
Yeah.
Now, who would have heard that? Which is just what kind of prompts you give to a
Yeah.
AI based system like a Chat GPT, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also have been using this in a very limited way. And as you likely said, it's an evolving thing, but it is going to be part of our life, whether we
Yeah.
like it or not, because it is going to bring in more efficiencies. It is
Yeah.
going to bring in more, productivity, and organizations will look for it. I
Yeah.
attended one of the conference where this company Tanishq, they
Mm.
showcased their design model through AI,
Mm.
and it was
Mm.
really mind-boggling at the level of AI that they have used for last 3 4 years, Gen AI,
Mm.
where
Mm.
a designer gives the specification for designing an earring, for instance,
Mm. Mm.
and the AI model comes up with 5 different options,
Mm.
based on,
Yeah.
and then you can tweak it. Okay, make it little subtle, or make it little, this color, that
Mm.
color, this budget,
Mm.
XYZ. So it was a real eye opener for me that the company, an Indian company, is already at it, and
Yeah.
going forward, I think it will become more of a compulsion than an option, if you ask me,
Yeah.
because each and every company, it is such a fast thing. It is so
Yeah.
fast that you cannot comprehend.
Yeah. True. True.
And I
True.
think this is something which is going to, in terms of duration, maybe sooner than we think. But I think
Yeah.
definitely in the next 3 years, we will see, this becoming a big part of most of the industries. Of course,
Yeah.
there are certain data privacy and ethical issues around it as well.
Yeah.
I think that is also something which is evolving at this time,
Yeah.
which will know
Yeah.
when these things take shape. So
Yeah,
that's
it's very
what.
interesting. The thing is that the more I read and study the topic, the more I realize that I don't have a clue in terms of what's going
Absolutely.
to happen, right? And I'm sure you have a similar sentiment, but yeah, I don't have a clue, quite honestly. I think if I had to just make a few random, obvious comments, they're not even whatever. I think the obvious comments would be, as we're already seeing that it's a huge efficiency and productivity increase happens as a result of using those tools. So
Yes.
I've said this, I think, many times on this show, but I heard this quote that said, AI is not going to take your job, but a person who knows how to use AI well will definitely take your job, right?
Correct.
Because in the end, somebody needs to communicate let's just take the business scene. Somebody needs to communicate a business problem to some person. He needs to understand the business problem, then use a tool that kind of brings the solution back, right? But
Yeah.
in the end, you're trying to solve a problem for a human in some way at the end, right? So there has to be that understanding of that goes to another human that uses the tool to bring a solution
Yes.
back to that person, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that it's definitely people must upskill themselves in every AI tool that is relevant to their industry. And just to tell you, right, I don't mean to do a plug on our own show, but in
Mm.
each and every one of upgrads courses across the board, we have included modules and generative AI, and we were one of the quickest to do that. And even
Yes.
before Chat GPT came in, right, we already had so many programs on machine learning and AI
Mm.
because we knew what was happening, but now it's literally
Yeah.
integrated in every program that we're doing. But I
Correct.
think learning the right tools is extremely important in your profession, right?
Absolutely.
Uh,
And this is something which is going to impact all the function, not just
yeah,
HR. So
yeah,
it's like I gave an example of brand design, product
yeah,
design right now.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's something which I was thinking whether I can do similar thing in my industry. I
yeah,
mean, of course,
yeah,
it's a learning system, so you need to create a database, you need to
yeah,
start, and
yeah.
then after few years when it starts to learn, and then you
Yeah,
will start probably getting. So it's an investment that you need to make now, both in
yeah,
your upgrading your skills as well as putting in place a system,
yeah.
which would give you returns later.
In the
That's what.
future, yeah. But just from an individual's point of view,
Hmm.
um, just learning the tools, yeah. And I keep referring to the simplest example of saying that, if you're a lawyer, for
Hmm.
example, please
Hmm.
ensure that you know what is the AI tool that you need to
Correct.
equip yourself with to do your
Absolutely.
job more productively and more efficiently, because if you don't, somebody else will, and he or she will have an edge over
Yes.
you,
Yes.
right? So if you don't learn the tools currently, you don't need to be a tech person to be part of the AI revolution. You need to be the learner of the tool that is already
Exactly.
available
Exactly.
in some way in your profession, in your world, and increase your efficiency, right? So I definitely see that happening. On the flip side, at least what we see currently is, I'll just give you my own example. When Chat GPT came in first, there was like so much of hype around it, and then Bard. So of course, I was using it, right? And uh, you know, after a while, you don't use it. Right? You
Yes.
get what I'm trying to say? So you
Yeah.
also stop using that particular way of chatting, and you use it rarely. So I wouldn't say you don't use it, but you use it
Yeah.
rarely as compared to it being new and a
New
toy.
and a fancy thing to start, and then no,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that said, Chat GPT is just one tool. But in the
Of
field in
course,
such
of
general,
course.
right? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
it has a lot of possibilities. You can
yeah, yeah.
just see what it can do.
Yeah.
Like of mundane work. The
Mm,
other day somebody sent me this photographs of technological evolutions that
mm,
has happened.
mm,
And then there was one photograph of some 60s or 70s that shown this telephone operators. You remember when we
mm,
had the fixed landline, there was this
mm,
people putting out sockets from one side, putting it in another,
mm.
and that job no longer exists today. Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. True,
So,
true, 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 true,
so
true, true.
it's like that, So God knows, what this thing will do,
Yeah,
but it is
yeah,
something to be reckoned with, and of course, it has its own benefits and cons, as you said,
yeah.
and eventually every system does. So,
Yeah, yeah. True, true, true. I always look at it from a lens of exciting times ahead,
yeah,
right?
true, true.
I think each one of these things have always brought exciting, but yes, I think AI definitely is a tad different from other technologies that we've had in the
Had
past, right?
in the past, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it'll bring together something different for us in the
Sure,
future.
hopefully better and good
Yeah,
stuff.
hopefully better. So, Amit, just going on from this question, right? So, therefore, does a young professional, what skills does a young professional need to be equipped with in 2023? Right. So what I want you to picture is,
Hmm.
if you were just getting out of college in
Hmm.
2023,
Hmm.
and Mahin has asked me to frame this question this way for you. So if you were getting out of college in 2023,
Hmm.
and you were to give yourself advice on what are the three skills that are going to help you the most in doing well in your career, what would those three skills be?
So the first question I would ask, if I'm getting out of college now, are you sure you want to do HR? Lighter side.
Yeah, that's a good
No,
one.
but I know I'll give you my example. When you go out, get out of college, like
Yeah.
there are a lot of things people will tell you, do this, do
Mm,
that, even before you're out of college. So,
mm,
end of the day, it's very difficult to prescribe what one skill or two skills or three skills a person would need. I
yeah,
think it's the kind of attitude that you cultivate what
yeah,
that matters. So
yeah,
what has worked for me, that always be curious,
yeah,
always be on the lookout,
yeah.
never be closed, be open to things as mundane or as fancy it may look to begin with,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And then you figure out for yourself, what is the kind of thing that will go well with your personality. Like I
yeah.
chose HR, for instance,
Mm,
because
mm,
I looked at various personality traits that I
mm,
have in me, and did some discussion, of course, with my seniors,
mm,
with close family members,
mm,
of course, and then kind of validated my decision, in terms
mm,
of pursuing HR.
mm,
So if you can have that kind of a learning attitude or have a
mm,
curiosity about things,
mm,
it would eventually, it automatically push you towards developing those skills which are necessary.
mm,
Otherwise, it's very difficult to say, okay, you do this, because if the moment I say and the person is there, and I'll give you an example which I saw on with my own. So when we were studying, Java was something considered as a
mm.
the next thing.
Yeah,
You need to learn Java, and
yeah.
we were worried that it for us it doesn't come in the course till the fourth semester. So what do we
Mm,
do? Should we do
mm,
some tuitions on our own, or that kind of that thing? But by the time we passed out, we already had the dot-com burst, and this it became very, so that's IT industry that moves very fast.
mm,
So but if you have that kind of attitude, that irrespective of the programming language, as they say, you are, have that knack of picking up the logical reasoning, the fundamentals that are in place, you will eventually pick up that skill. But if you get into a thing that I know it all, I don't need to upgrade myself, then it's a, doomsday for even at any stage of a career. Why just start
Got
of the college?
got
Once you're born, your learning journey starts. You learn to walk, you learn to talk, you learn to eat. So it's
it.
always the learn is the underlying word, right?
Yeah.
So it continues, throughout your life. And if
Yeah.
you have that humility to accept that, I am always a learner and not an expert in anything,
Hmm.
I think that is what helps. And that is what advice I would think would be there for any professionals, who's coming out now from college.
Got it. So
Have a
I'm going to
learning
ask.
mindset, be
Got,
humble to, try new things. That's
got
what.
it. I'm going to summarize what you said and add if there's anything I've missed out. So you are talking for like as a general, like anybody coming out of college, you're saying behaviors, having the right
Yeah.
attitude and behaviors is far more important than skills in specific.
Mm.
And those behaviors or attitudes would be the attitude of being curious,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
About stuff that is very important. Number two, you said the attitude of having an open mind,
Yes.
right? And both of these indicate towards learning, right?
Yes.
Constantly, but the open mind, which is very important. The third thing that you mentioned is ensuring that you discover, how your personality can be aligned to a certain role
Yes.
or vocation or profession, right? In
Yes.
some way. So that self discovery is very, very important. Then to know how to align yourself.
Absolutely, because you may also feel the peer pressure that your ex friend is doing this, your wife friend is
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
People are telling you to do this, but
Mm.
those are the choices may not be the best things for you, right?
Mm. Yeah.
My father was very keen that I pursue civil services, but in my
Mm.
mind, I knew that I would never be successful, with all due
Mm.
respect to the bureaucrats that are running the
Mm.
country,
Yeah,
in an
yeah, yeah,
environment like that, because,
yeah,
I know myself, in
yeah,
terms of my own personality. So that's
yeah,
why I ever chose that I would never, going to work in an area which I'm not comfortable with. So
yeah,
because eventually I would, be, survive for certain time, but one day the reality will hit and then I will get frustrated. And then
yeah,
at that point in time, perhaps it would be too late to try something new or
yeah,
make a
yeah.
pivot towards anything else. Yeah.
I think that's the human beings spend the bulk of their life either traveling to work or work, right?
Yes.
These
Yes.
are your two biggest components of your life, are followed by sleep, right? If you
Yes.
actually think of it. So we spend a like whole lot of time of our life working or traveling to work.
Mm.
So I think your work being aligned to your personality is very important, right? And in a way, a secret to a good life, if you ask me, is finding the right profession or vocation to be in,
Yes.
and finding the right organizations to be in, and surround yourself by the right people at the workplace.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important part of living a good life,
Yeah.
right? In all. So I think you've been very wise in brushing off the pressure to a certain extent. You still you did your computer science masters, so you brushed it off to a certain extent, but
Yeah.
I'm sure the pressure that you could not brush off also is coming very, very handy right now, right?
Yes.
So I think I've always noticed this thing that most people that uh, you know come from an engineering background or a computer science background, even if they don't pursue it, they'll never really speak about it negatively, right?
No, no,
Because
it's nothing.
they know that they learned a lot in that, even if they were
Right.
not the best at it, even if they knew it wasn't their thing to do, they know that they still learned a lot from that.
No, so I got fairly good, I was fairly good at my computer science things,
Great.
so in
Yeah.
terms of my academics and all,
Yeah.
and I would have been decently successful, but I would not have
Yeah.
been happy. So,
Yeah.
that it was, for me, it's nothing negative about the field as
Yeah.
such,
Yeah. Of
right? But it's
course. Yeah.
about me, I could not see myself sitting on the computer, logged in and, making codes out of writing lines of
Yeah.
codes
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
churning
Yeah.
out programs after programs now in
Correct.
terms of apps. But end of the day, these are the things that has made our life easy. It's
Yeah.
not that.
Yeah.
And COVID, also the IT function also came to fore. When while
Yeah.
we talk about HR, I think the silent hero or the,
Of
or the IT
course.
function. Had it not been for the IT function, forget remote working, forget any
Yeah.
working for that matter.
Yes. Yes.
So it's
Absolutely.
it's nothing about the field as such, but
Yes. Yes.
for me,
100%.
it didn't,
Appeal.
appeal or was a
Yeah.
compelling case to pursue my career long term
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
area.
Of course, I think anybody that any kind of maturity, I feel knows that every field is important, every
Yeah,
field is valuable, and if that field was not there, it would impact all of us negatively, right? So during COVID, there are so many different silent heroes, some a little
really was.
silent, some not silent, but
Uh,
you get what I'm trying to say, from
yeah,
scientists and R&D to manufacturing heroes to entrepreneurial heroes to tech heroes, like you said, to HR heroes. So many people had to raise their game in some way for us as humanity to overcome such a big challenge, right? But we saw that happening, right? We saw that
absolutely.
happening very
They
beautifully.
were they were people, professions who never took, like the medical and the paramedical staff, the essential services, people managing it.
Yeah, yeah,
Not even a single day work from home,
yeah, yeah,
even
yeah,
during the most severe
yeah.
of times. But yeah, that's what has kept us going.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And supermarkets, yeah.
yeah,
You realize how important a supermarket or a general store is, no?
yeah, absolutely.
How
True,
important that job is, right?
true, true, absolutely. Yeah.
I know some jobs pay more and some jobs pay less. There's no doubt about it. But I think all of us, should, and at once you get to a certain maturity, you understand that every job is important, every job is valuable, and if therefore every job needs to be respected,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I think that's very good, and I think the impact that people like us have seen in our lifetime about technology
Yes.
and IT, right? Both technology as a whole and IT in specific, we would be the last people to say anything bad about it.
Absolutely. Very true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So tell
Yeah.
me a last final question. Amit, it's been such an engaging conversation with you that we've run out of time. But my last question is for people in the HR world in specific, right?
Hmm.
And so if you're an HR executive or manager
Hmm.
and you want to become an Amit Arora, you want to become an HR head at some point of time,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them? Three pieces of advice.
First of all, don't become Amit Arora, become the best version of you. So if you are Swapnil, become best version of
True, true,
Swapnil. So if
true,
you
true,
are
true. Yeah.
Ramesh, become a best version of Ramesh. Don't
Yeah.
try and emulate
Yes.
someone. Everybody has a unique set of experiences, personality.
Yeah.
So that's what I have done. While I have leaders or aspirational people who have inspired me throughout my life, but I have never tried to be like them.
Yeah, yeah, of
Because in
course.
my heart, I know I can never be like them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everybody has. So that's one piece. Uh, Especially for young, aspiring professionals, never shy away from anyone,
Mm.
any opportunity. In fact, put up your hand for, even if it involves a bit of stretching, if you have to slog a bit, compromise on few of the, perks of the life, if you may call,
Mm. Yeah.
but because these are the grounding that happens in the initial year that stays with you
Mm.
throughout your life.
Mm.
And if
Mm.
you are, thorough in the initial part of a career, the first 5 7 years, if I may put it, if I have to put a time frame, where you can get and build an expertise in an area and go as deep. Of course, it will evolve, but you become a certain domain knowledge level expert in certain area.
Mm.
I think those are the most critical years.
Yeah.
If you pass those times, so if you have the same experience repeated over and over, after 7 8 years, you would be 1 year experience repeated 8 times, not
Mm.
8 years of
Mm.
experience. I think
Mm.
that's something which you should be very, which I would advise anybody who is, if he comes to me for advice. And the other part, as I said, try and get into business. There's no alternative to it.
Yeah.
Understand, and one thing that has helped me, I have always tried to think from my boss's perspective. What would make him look good? What is what is he or she thinking? What would be his challenges? And then I try and figure out my intervention, my solutions
Yeah.
to that extent. Not only that, it helps me develop kind of thinking, because in my mind I visualize, okay, if instead of my boss I was making this presentation to board, for example,
Mm. Mm.
how would I go about it? What would the questions come from them?
Mm.
And then these are the things which, so visualization is another thing which I do. It's a work in progress. I'm not saying an expert. I believe I think Virat Kohli from cricket, I think does it the best. He's talked about it a lot of times.
Mm,
But I
mm,
think there is a merit in what he's saying. I've seen the benefits of that. So I think that's
mm,
something which I follow.
mm,
Trying to do not very easy thing. You have to make a conscious effort towards it.
mm,
And
mm,
it's always work in progress, learning on the
mm.
go. Right.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. A few
Mm.
things that come to mind, right? A lot of people, especially during the early parts of their career, if they don't put in the required work, they're not going to learn at the pace at which they need to
Correct.
learn.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I explain it to people in that way. I say, you feel that you're working hard for a company. No, the first person that you're working hard is for yourself
Yourself.
and for your own learning,
Yes.
right? Because if you're going to work hard, that is going to expedite your learning. And that's also in some way going to build some muscle in you. It's going to
Sure.
grow your confidence of your ability to get a lot of stuff done, right? So you realize that, hey, I can do a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of belief that I can do a lot of stuff also matters. And when you put in the long hours and take up challenging projects, it also helps you learn much quicker,
Yeah.
and therefore be able to succeed in your career at a far quicker pace than you would be able to do otherwise,
Yeah,
right?
and also at the formative year, the stakes are not as high as when
Yeah,
get say very senior in the hierarchy,
yeah,
because
yeah,
you can still do. I'm not saying, you can still fail and recover, or you can commit
yeah,
some mistake. There is always your boss who will cover up for you.
yeah,
But the stakes keep on getting higher, and the impact is, great. So you don't get a chance to experiment too much
yeah, yeah,
as you grow higher, which you can
yeah,
do in the initial part of
yeah,
your
yeah,
career. I think, and
yeah,
I think you should do that.
yeah,
Whatever way works for you.
yeah, absolutely. So I don't think there's, unfortunately, although this is still early days of AI, I think unfortunately there's still no replacement for good old hard work,
Yes.
right? If somebody
Yes.
wants to do well in their career, if doing well in your career doesn't matter, then well, this advice doesn't hold good for you. But if you really want to expedite your career, if you really want to do well, I think there's no substitute for hard work. And I think you added a very, very nice point, right? There's this beautiful quote that says some people say they have 20 years of experience, but what they really have is 1 year of experience repeated 20 times,
Yeah,
right?
true, absolutely.
And it's very important, therefore, for you within an organization to constantly challenge yourself,
Yes.
even if a new challenge doesn't come from your organization.
Correct.
It's a very interesting way to look at stuff, right? There would be some organizations where challenges would come on you, right, by
Sure.
default, but in some cases there may not. But who's stopping you from creating your own challenge,
In
right?
fact, since you are talking, I just, one of the mantras that I carry for, I heard, I mean, in very initial years of my career, I got an access to a video of David Braddon, who was the,
Mm,
CEO and then went on to become the chairman of Domino's. And he
mm,
actually turned around Domino's
mm,
globally. And he was telling his, there was a website called 50lessons.com. I don't know whether it still
mm,
exists or
mm,
not.
mm,
So in a 5-minute video, he tried to give his take on the leadership thing. And one of the very interesting thing that he said, that he was a football player in his
mm,
college, and they were so good that they would easily beat any other team to the competition. And the coaches that point in time, always ingrained. It was very easy for them to get complacent, become arrogant, and because all they needed to do was just show up, and they would beat the hell out of the competition.
mm,
But what they did was the coaches always inherited, a belief that, that you either get better or you get worse. There is nothing as
mm.
staying the same. So your
Yeah.
benchmark is for you, right?
Mm,
And he took that analogy to the business,
yeah.
and of course, the rest is history. So I think
Yeah.
that one statement had a profound effect on me.
Yeah.
I still carry that video as a part of my,
That's that.
whenever I feel, I just for a reminder thing. So it's very, very powerful statement that you either get better or you get
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
Nothing like
Yeah.
staying the same. So
Yeah, yeah. Such a. I think we can go on talking. I want to add a something that to which you just that in India they it's not used that often anymore, but our parents' generation often use this word called settled.
uh,
He's now he's well settled,
well
right?
settled. Yes.
And I would just keep telling people, saying dust settles, right? Human
Correct.
beings should not settle,
Not settled.
right? And what it essentially means is that you should try to grow, right?
Yes.
And not grow for the sake of it, because trying to grow yourself in any domain is life's most engaging project.
Correct.
right? It's the most engaging, positive, and productive project that you can engage in. What else can you
Absolutely.
engage in, right? Than
Absolutely.
that. So engage in the project of growing yourself, and you'll have a very good life in all.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And a lot of times people don't realize it. They think that, you need to grow for money. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's secondary. That's peripheral benefits that you're going to get, right?
That
From it.
will eventually happen if you grow. If you
Yeah.
work on yourself, these things are eventually. A lot of people, end up chasing these things, money,
Yeah.
designation, hierarchy. But if you work on that, it will eventually happen. If not, it company A, company B. I mean, like you said, there are a lot of opportunities. Right?
Yeah.
Somebody would realize your worth. But once they do, they better should know that you are of value to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 Amit, it's been a real pleasure
same
speaking
here,
to you.
Swami. Yeah.
It's been more than an hour that we're talking. I didn't realize how my time went by, and that's when I know I'm having a fantastic conversation with somebody. Thank you very much
Thank you,
for
Swapnil.
coming
Thank
on.
you.
Any last words of wisdom that you have?
No, just wish you and everybody at Upgrad a very happy new year and happy holidays. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to you too. And I hope to see you soon in
Sure.
person
Absolutely.
sometime,
Look
either at
forward to
my
that
office or yours.
meeting you. I may
Okay.
travel to Bombay. Definitely would look forward to meeting you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.